I've got a little bit of a flummox issue here. And if I'm an owner-operator, I own a distributor, and I'm very much old school. I'm proud of my dinosaur stripe. And I know I need to change. It's one thing, because you guys have all been, I mean, big companies, you got a lot of stuff going, and governance and boards and all that. If I'm the owner-operator where my board meeting is Thanksgiving dinner, it's one thing to recognize that I'm a Triassic reptile, but how do I, if I'm the senior guy and I don't have a board, are you just stuck? I mean, do you have to just like start smoking and hope you die and another guy comes in? I mean, how does somebody deal with it?
I think, a lot of things we do right in this industry is, I think we have great networking capabilities, whether it's meetings like this or however. So I think you have to continue to network and see what other people are doing. I think you have to pay close attention, regardless of what size your company is, to your succession planning and to that investment in what you're training that person to do that's going to take over. And, sometimes succession planning, it just jumps on you. You don't, whatever some event, and all of a sudden your hair's on fire trying to plan.
That's the wrong time to do it.
That's the wrong time to do it. So it has to be something that's thought out in advance, and how you support that. How do you do it? So I think that one way to do it is by a lot of networking, talking to each other, and again, that trust thing. If you, in the world we live in today, you're going to have to talk to people not only in your own company, but other companies that you weren't comfortable talking to before about certain things, because we're all in the same boat here. And how we going to? And I worry very much about how we're going to promote the industry. And sometimes you have to think about the industry before yourself.
That's the best kept secret around.
Right. Yeah. I think this is one of the greatest industries, and I've had an opportunity to work in others where there's really good people in this industry, and the fact that we can network and talk about that, I think, is one way you do it, and not wait for your Thanksgiving dinner and just your little small group. And to some of the things you were saying, it's not up to you to just, you have to think of everything. There's great resources around you if you just open up a little bit and listen and share. And so I think that's what the rest of the world's doing, and that's what you have to do. It's not uncommon to go to another company and people are talking openly, and here we're like, you don't want to share.
But how do you build trust? Right. I mean, I'm sorry.
Right. But I mean, that goes to the heart of it.
Well, because, inherently, and we've all heard this too, younger people today have families and parents that lost their jobs because of downsizing, right-sizing, offshoring, whatever it is that's happened. So that commitment for trust means, as leaders, you have to be vulnerable, right? And so how do you build trust with younger people today?
I think just being honest. Telling them what the risks are, telling them, that, we went into jobs. I remember I grew up in a neighborhood where people worked at the same job their whole life, I mean, you know who was on day work, and I think it was, nowadays that's not the case, people don't stay 5 years, so people have to understand what the risks are, and I think they're willing to take them if they understand it. The thing is, you're not talking to them about that. So once they understand, and I think your word vulnerability is just an incredibly important word, so you have to be vulnerable, and they have to understand they're vulnerable, and you have to understand, hey, we'd like this to happen, but this is what could happen in a changing world. And when they're comfortable in that, they'll learn to trust you.
I also like your word vulnerability, Kathy. I really believe that you have to be utterly transparent. As Americans, we're used to being spun to death. I almost stopped watching TV altogether because I never know where the truth lies. But the fact of the matter is, I think people need to hear, when it's good, when it's bad, no varnish on it, right? And I think the generations coming in are really the basis of everything we do is trust. And if you can't be square with people, I don't think you can move beyond that. And that, for me, I think as I grew as a leader and, continue to learn and work on my own gaps, part of it is just being open to criticism, being open to have somebody say, that idea you had was really bad. And what happens from that point forward.
That could be career limiting, though, doesn't it?
Well, it depends. How you react from that point forward depends on whether you'll actually get feedback in the future, right? You know,
and it hurts.
it does hurt.
I mean, it does hurt. Okay,
you know,
I mean, you could sit there and say, yeah, I can take it. Oh, it still hurts when somebody comes up to you and says, you know, why did you do that? That was really dumb. And you're thinking, okay.
Right, that doesn't matter.
So much for the big title, right?
It's
Okay.
And it's okay to say, I don't know.
That's right.
I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, what do you think? And then sometimes just that question, what do you think, is different. No one ever asked you what you think. It doesn't matter what kind of business you're in, what size your company is, it's the same thing. You know, just, so that's how I think you start the trust wheel rolling, you know.
And I do think we work in an industry, we're very blessed. I don't know how you all feel, but we have some of the most hard-working, dedicated people that are out there, right? 1 out of every 20 jobs in the U.S. is a distributor, which is amazing. People don't know that. It's a $4.7 trillion industry that nobody knows about. But very few people I meet in the industry are not nice people.
That's true.
Strong, hard-working, solid values, working with each other to make each other better. It's all about raising up the industry, making sure we're all better collectively. You can't say that about many industries or many businesses because it's become such a cutthroat, competitive world that those of us that are in this industry, to pass it on to future generations, I think that is our obligation, because I think we need to cherish it, develop it, make it highly competitive from the outside perspective so that we can take care of each other in the industry.
Well, let me put you guys in the spot for a sec, because if you go out 20 years, one of the things that I loved about this industry is that this still embodied the American dream. You didn't have to have a college degree.
Absolutely.
You know, and I'm willing to work hard, and I got good values, and I could make all kinds of money and have a wonderful life and do all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But if you start to look at what's happened with colleges and sort of all this self-selection and sort of like we're getting this bigger gulf, you know, like really smart, well-educated and everybody else. Is the non-college graduate still going to have a play here in 20 years?
I believe so. I think that, you know, college is great for kids that want to go to college, but I would, if I could wave my magic wand, I'd like to see a resurgence of trade schools, you know, where people are learning to, you know, work in a factory, even though it's a high-tech factory. You know, I mean, sitting there across from a history major, you know, and, you know, okay, so what do you want to do, you know? And so I think you're going to have you know, specifically educated people, whether it's in the trades or in technologies, IT, as opposed to and I think there'll be room for everybody, as long as you're looking for those values. So I think that, yes, I think this, in my opinion, yes, the industry can still go, and I think that you're just going to need different skill sets. And my fear is that we're not developing as a country those different skill sets. You know, that we're putting too much emphasis on, you know, you have to go to college. And what made our industry is people that knew how to do stuff and were willing to work hard. And I think we're going to have to kind of go back to the future a little bit. And that's what you see in other countries. I mean, you know, the people that are, quote, kicking our butt, as they say, which I really don't think they are, but you hear that, aren't all college graduates, you know, and they're not all sociology majors and stuff. You know, they're people that have learned to do things, and you got to learn to pick those people. And then that's only the first step. Then it's what are you willing, as you know, I think Kathy was talking about, what are you willing to invest in them? And that's where the education really begins.
Absolutely.
You know, and that's the important thing.
Kathy and I kind of came up through sales, right? I was the good salesman, so they made me the sales manager, and I thought it was all about me. But are we still 20 years from now, non-college degree? Is there still going to be a role for the world famous? Because that's the butterfly in this industry, is the field salesperson. I mean, what's that going to look like in 20 years? Are they going to have college degrees?
You know, I would tend to side with what Dominic said. I'm a great believer in the resurgence of trade schools. I think there's a combination. But I think the more important question for all of us to answer is, you know, the thing that I always look for in a person is whether or not they're intellectually curious.
Right.
You know, I mean, college or trade school teaches a specific set, but I believe deeply that college teaches us how to think logically and perhaps prepares us to be curious about our world. And, you know, I really think the differentiator will not be whether or not I went to college, or I think it's important, by the way, I think it's more important than ever. But I believe that, you know, what we really need what I think about is that person intellectually curious? You know, I look at it and I don't know what Kathy would say or Dominic would say, but I wake up scared most every morning, thinking about, you know, what might happen in our industry. I mean, you know, if you were running a book factory 10 years ago, you might be just getting back from lunch with your feet up on the desk thinking, man, as long as they're teaching people to read, I'm in tall cotton. And, you know, and the reality is, right?
You're toast.
Yeah, 10 years later, 50% of that market is now electronic. So what happens if, you know, there's a means by which we run electricity without wire and pipe, right? What happens to our industry? And I think more important than ever, we have to populate our business with people who are voracious learners.
Yep.
I'd make 2 points, and I have a little test. If I'm going to hire someone particular, and coming from sales, I happen to think that your sales force is really what reflects your company. You know that, and you have so maybe because I come from sales, I think it's a very, very important. And I'm talking about your sales force in a broad sense. That's what people see about. They don't see the people in the warehouse. They don't see the people in the factory. So I think that's important. And I just run my little test is when you're talking to these people, would I want to have a beer with this person if I didn't have to? You know, and would I buy a used car from them? And if the answer to one of those questions is no, I don't think they're going to be a very good salesperson, you know, because that's what your customers are going to think. And the most important thing that goes between you and your customers is trust, you know. So I agree.
That does cut to the car chase, man.
I agree that, you know, you want someone that's inquisitive and someone that, you know, people want to, you know, hang around with. And that's something that's even different now. You get some of the young guys, when you used to go to the bar, you know, you had to out-drink them, out-curse them, out-fight them, you know.
I did really well.
Now, you know, now kids are drinking like some kind of fruit juice and stuff.
Yeah.
And you're going, man, what is that?
Red Bull.
How about a
Red
vodka?
Bull.
Yeah. You know, and they're drinking.
And they don't want to hang
they're
out
drinking
necessarily
Red Bull.
until hours, right. But
So I think I think there's plenty. I think that's what's really going to move the country. You look at even big companies, you know, Microsoft, companies like that. I don't think they finished college, those guys.
Well, and I do think, to your point, I agree with all of you. College is something that we take for granted in many cases, right? Because we'll say, do they have a college degree? Well, the secret about me, which isn't really a secret, is I ended up dropping out of college when I started with Graybar. I left a full ride scholarship, a science and math, Bosch alum science and math scholarship. I was going to be a doctor. Decided I didn't want to be a doctor and left school when I started at Graybar as a customer service rep. And now I have the opportunity to serve in a leadership role to run the company. Now, when I went, you know, Graybar has a tuition reimbursement program, so as I worked full-time, I went to college at night. And ended up, I have 3 degrees now. I just can't learn enough. I just love to learn. That's why they're making fun of me. I thought this was great.
She's got pages of notes.
Well,
here.
because
We actually thanked you, Kathy. We did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
making us look good.
No, you were making fun
You
of
can tell the sales guys from.
making fun of me.
Yeah, close enough.
All right, you got it. Close enough.
Well, because it's about lifelong learning, to your point. And so when I was thinking about these trends in the future, I thought, oh, this is cool. So I started reading all sorts of things. And I think that is, to your point, that's what we're looking for. We can develop and train. We can provide, in our case, tuition reimbursement for programs. But that ability to learn, to develop social relationships, which are different today, right? Having a relationship is different. But I do think the sales force of the future may be different. One of the things when I look at the future of distribution is that we all have different customer groups that we serve, right? You have your construction customers, your industrial, your commercial, government, whoever it is, right? We all have different ones. Some of us have all of them. Some of us have a niche. Some of us are focused on different kinds of businesses, transactional.
Some of us are just trying to get a PO.
That's right. So, I mean, you've got it all. And, but we do especially have a one-size-fits-all sales organization. And so the challenge to us as leaders in the future is based off what the customer wants, how do you create what I'll call mini supply chains or mini service models within your own company to support the different customers' needs? And then you look at that and you decide, what kind of sales organization do I need to support it? Do I need a traditional outside sales rep model? We have a customer service rep, so on and so forth. Do you handle it with some kind of, you know, inside sales support? That's your main contact with the customer. Is there going to be an online play? You know, you talk about Amazon supply or whatever we keep hearing about. Will that be one that disrupts our industry to the point where we have to figure out how we're going to support our customers to make sure we stay viable, right? And is that a different kind of sales organization? So I do think that the skills are going to be very, very in the future based off of the customer's needs and the threats we have to our industry. But if we do a good job, all of us collectively, those threats don't worry me because we're bringing the value to the customer, not just throwing what we think is important, but listening to what they need and respond.
That's really, it's really important. What you really see is if you look at your customer base, that person that buys your product is very different than the person that used to buy your product 5, 10, and if you ask me 20 years from now what's going to look most different, it's the person buying your product and how they buy it. And you're going to have a sales force that relates to that person that makes the purchasing decision, or that machine that makes the purchasing decision. I mean, I'm not a technology guy, but I was using my computer and printer, and I got have you ever seen the little thing comes on the bottom that says you're out of ink? And I said, okay, I'm out of ink, and told you can order ink,
right.
So I sat there, I sat there and I said, oh my goodness, this machine just told me I was out of ink, and it sold me ink, and I never even asked it what it cost. I didn't talk to anybody, and I just bought ink. And it's incredible, but that's exactly how it happened. Just that thing popped up, said you're out of ink, you want to buy ink, you hit the button, what color you want, boom, boom, and ink was on the way. And
all of us brag about our technology feats. I think that's really special, Dominic.
I bought ink.
Actually, in true confession, I did too this weekend. That's the first time I ever saw it. Just, it coming, it showed up.
It really made me think of the sales process. There was no salesman, there was no call.
And I bet they made a pretty decent markup on you.
Yeah.